Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, uncharted abyss, peering into a darkness that whispers your name with every breath you take. What if I told you that the sting of rejection, the one you've spent your life dodging, isn't a wound at all, but a map to that very depth, guiding you toward a truth you've always felt but never dared to touch? We've all felt it, that sharp twist in the gut when someone turns away, when a door slams shut, when a no echoes louder than any yes ever could. But here's the uncomfortable reality. Rejection doesn't strike from the outside. It's a mirror held up by the world, reflecting the parts of you that tremble in silence, the pieces you've buried beneath layers of borrowed masks. You've been taught to fear it, to see it as a verdict on your worth, a signal that you're not enough. Yet, what if that burning ache isn't a punishment, but a call, a raw, unrelenting invitation to look within and ask why it hurts so much, why it lingers like a shadow you can't outrun? The mind recoils at the thought, doesn't it? It's easier to point outward, to blame the one who walked away, than to admit that the real sting comes from a voice you've carried all along, whispering doubts you've never silenced. Carl Jung once said that what irritates us in others is a key to understanding ourselves, and rejection is no different. Every time someone pushes you away, they're not just rejecting a version of you, they're spotlighting a fracture, an insecurity, a hidden shame you've refused to face. Think back to that last time you felt it, the cold weight of dismissal settling into your chest. Did it hurt because they saw you lacking, or because deep down you've already convinced yourself of the same? Here's where it gets strange, almost paradoxical. The more you chase approval, the more rejection finds you. It's as if the universe senses your desperation, your neediness, and responds by pulling away, leaving you grasping at air. But what if you stopped running? What if, instead of fleeing that discomfort, you turned toward it, stepped into it, let it wash over you like a tide you no longer fear drowning in? This isn't about pretending rejection doesn't hurt. It does, and it always will. It's about realizing that the pain isn't your enemy. It's a teacher, stripping away the illusions you've clung to, revealing the strength beneath your fragility. We live in a world obsessed with acceptance, where every like, every nod, every fleeting affirmation feels like a lifeline. Yet, the moment you tether your worth to those fragile threads, you surrender your power, becoming a puppet to forces you can't control. Now, picture this, a version of you that doesn't flinch at a no, that doesn't bend under the weight of someone else's opinion. That version isn't cold or detached. It's alive, unshakable, radiating a quiet fire that draws others in without even trying. They call it self-sufficiency, but it's more than that. It's a reckoning with the shadow Jung spoke of, the unseen parts of you that fester in the dark. To face it is to integrate it, to weave those broken threads into a tapestry that no longer needs external stitching. How many times have you betrayed yourself for a scrap of approval that never came? How often have you dimmed your own light, hoping someone else would deem it worthy of shining? The irony is brutal. The more you twist yourself to fit their mold, the less they want you. Authenticity isn't a performance. It's the absence of one, the courage to stand alone even when the crowd turns its back. And here's the secret they don't tell you. The world doesn't reject the real you. It rejects the mask, the plea, the hollow echo of someone trying too hard. When you stop begging for a seat at the table, you become the table, the center, the mystery others can't resist. This isn't some cheap trick of reverse psychology. It's a law of existence, as old as human nature itself. The less you need, the more you receive, not because you've mastered indifference, but because you've uncovered abundance within. Think of the people who captivate you, the ones who seem to walk through life with an effortless pull. They're not chasing validation. They face their shadows, embrace their solitude, and found a strength that doesn't demand applause. Rejection, then, isn't a dead end. It's a doorway, a chance to ask why you crave that yes so badly, why you've handed your worth to hands that don't even know their own. Each no is a chisel, carving away the excess, leaving only what's true. But let's dig deeper, because the real twist lies here. The rejection that cuts deepest isn't the one from out there, it's the one you inflict on yourself every day. Every time you silence your voice, every time you shrink to fit, you reject the only person who's been with you from the start. That's the shadow's game. It thrives in your refusal to see it, directing your life from the wings while you chase spotlights that never stay lit. Jung called it individuation, this messy, beautiful process of gathering your fragments. But it begins with a single, terrifying step: choosing yourself. Have you ever noticed how the same patterns haunt you? Failed connections, familiar wounds, rejection dressed in different faces. It's not fate. It's your shadow, screaming for attention, begging you to stop looking outward for what it's desperate to show you within. What would happen if you listened? What would shift if you sat with that discomfort? Let it speak. Let it unravel the stories you've told yourself about who you're allowed to be. We're drowning in a culture of curated perfection, filters, smiles, endless scrolls hiding the chaos underneath. But what if you stripped that away, wore your scars like medals, let the world see the beauty in your cracks? People don't connect to flawlessness. They're drawn to the real, the raw, the one who's fallen and risen, not the one who pretends they've never stumbled. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the pulse of authenticity, the heartbeat of a life fully lived. This isn't about wallowing in rejection or playing the martyr. It's about wielding it, turning it into a blade that cuts through the lies you've swallowed. When you stop fearing it, you stop needing it to define you. And that's when the shift begins. Imagine a life where every no fuels you, where every closed door opens a window to something truer. That's not a fantasy. It's a choice, a stance, a refusal to let anyone else write your value. And yet, here's the trap we all fall into. We think the answer lies out there, in the next yes, the next win, the next heart that says you're enough. But what if you got it all, every dream, every prize, and still felt that gnawing void? That's the revelation. Nothing external can fill what's already whole inside you. The chase is a distraction, a delay, a refusal to see that you've always held the key. So why do you keep waiting? Why do you stand at the edge of yourself, peering into that abyss, afraid to leap when the fall is the only way to fly? It's fear, isn't it? Fear that it's all on you, that no one's coming to save you, that your worth isn't a gift bestowed, but a flame you must tend. But in that fear lies your liberation, the moment you realize the power was never theirs to give or take. When you grasp this, rejection loses its teeth. It becomes a guide, a signal, a quiet nudge toward the life you've been too scared to claim. You don't attract because you need. You attract because you are, and that shift changes everything. Look at the ones who light up the world, not the pleasers, not the chasers, but the ones who've dared to stand apart, to live by their own compass. Their magnetism isn't a trick, it's the byproduct of a soul that's wrestled its demons and won. So here's the dare. Stop begging for the world to see you and start seeing yourself, unfiltered, unapologetic, whole. The moment you do, the world will follow, not because you demanded it, but because it can't look away. Rejection isn't your end, it's your awakening, a spark that ignites the parts of you you've left dormant. Every no is a question. Will you keep outsourcing your worth, or will you finally claim it as your own? And now, as you sit with this, feeling the weight of it settle into your bones, consider the deepest mystery of all. What would your life look like if you knew beyond doubt that you never needed anyone's permission to be extraordinary? So, who are you waiting for to begin?